So it's a word you've probably heard floating around, but what is the manosphere? Well, it's this huge, complex, and honestly, pretty controversial network of online communities. Today, we're going to break down what it is, why it's so appealing to so many, and what the research actually says about its impact in the real world. Let's dive in. And that really brings us to the big question, the one that's driving this whole explainer. In a world with all the information you could ever want right at your fingertips, why are millions of young men turning specifically to the manosphere for guidance on, well, everything? Life, love, success? What is it offering them that they feel like they just can't get anywhere else? Okay, so to really get the appeal here, we have to go back to the very beginning. The journey into these online spaces, it almost always starts with a simple search for answers to some of life's most common problems. Now, you might think the path starts somewhere extreme, but a UN Women report shows it's actually much more relatable than that. A young guy might just be looking online for workout routines, or some advice on how to talk to women, or maybe strategies to get ahead financially. These are the kinds of seemingly innocent searches that act as gateways, leading them right to the doorstep of manosphere influencers. And this data right here gives us some really crucial context. Research from Equimundo paints a pretty stark picture of disconnection. Get this. A staggering 65% of young men feel like no one really knows me well, and almost half, 48%, say their online life is actually more rewarding than their offline one. When you have that kind of deep-seated loneliness, it creates a powerful, powerful need for community. And that's a need the manosphere is more than ready to fill. So these guys show up looking for answers, and what do they find? They find what looks like a clear, direct blueprint for success. A plan that promises to solve all their problems. You know, influencers like Andrew Tate are famous, or infamous, for their views on women. But an analysis of 640 of his videos by The Guardian found something really fascinating. The topic of women, it only came up in about 21% of his videos. But wealth and success, that was the main focus in 43% of them, more than double. It shows you that the main sales pitch isn't actually misogyny, it's aspiration. And this really gets to the core of the promise, right? In a world that can feel so uncertain and confusing, these influencers offer this simple, powerful message of agency. They're telling young men, hey, success is in your own hands. You just have to follow our plan to unlock it. This quote from journalist Matt Shea just perfectly captures that tough love appeal. For a lot of his followers, this message is a huge motivator. It's that kickstart they feel they need to stop wasting time and start building a better life. And you can see why that's an incredibly attractive promise. But here's the thing. This whole self-improvement journey, it comes with a catch. Because just beneath that surface of motivation and success, there's a really rigid and controversial ideology that followers are pushed to adopt. And this is where we get to the absolute core of the manosphere's worldview, and it's all symbolized by the red pill. Yeah, it's borrowed from the movie The Matrix, and taking the red pill means you're waking up to their version of reality. And what is that reality? It's the belief that feminism has basically rigged society against men and that you have to understand this truth if you ever want to succeed. So a central part of this ideology is this super rigid social hierarchy. Men get sorted into one of two boxes. You're either a dominant alpha, the successful guy everyone wants to be, or you're a submissive beta. It creates this very simple, if pretty harsh, model for what it means to be a man. You're either a winner or a loser, and everything you do should be about becoming that alpha. What's really interesting is how this whole thing messes with a man's sense of who he is. Experts suggest this ideology actually encourages guys to build what's called a false self. So instead of developing an authentic identity based on genuine connection, it promotes this fragile facade, this shell that's built on external things: money, status, dominance. And vulnerability? That's seen as the ultimate weakness. And, as you can probably guess, this ideology then gets translated into a very, very specific set of rules for how men are supposed to handle their romantic relationships. Yeah, research has laid out a pretty clear playbook of manipulative tactics. Things like staying emotionally distant, making your partner constantly afraid you might leave, dismissing their feelings by gaslighting them, and even actively sabotaging their independence to keep control. It's a strategy that's all about dominance, not partnership. And this quote, wow. It's from a study of women who actually dated red-pilled men, and it just powerfully shows the real-world result. The ideology creates this extreme all-or-nothing view. There's no nuance.
all women are just reduced to this one negative stereotype, which makes a healthy, trusting relationship pretty much impossible.
So, what this all boils down to is a framework where relationships are just not about connection. They get completely reframed as a zero-sum power game. The whole point becomes controlling a partner just to validate a man's status and, prop up that fragile false self we were talking about. All right, so what happens when these ideas jump off the screen and into the real world? Well, the consequences for both men and for women are pretty significant. So the big question is, does this ideology actually help with that loneliness that draws men in to begin with? Well, think about this. A UK study found that 28% of young people report struggling with anxiety. That's way higher than the general population. The manosphere claims it has the solution, but the evidence suggests it might actually be making things worse. And right here, this is the central paradox. Research shows that the very solutions the manosphere offers, like suppressing your emotions, obsessing over status, chasing dominance, they're actually linked to worse mental health outcomes, including higher feelings of worthlessness. And to really understand the bigger picture here, Dr. Cynthia Miller-Idris has a really useful definition. Misogyny isn't just about hating women, it's about containment. It's a whole system for policing everyone, including men, and forcing them into these rigid, narrow roles, keeping them from authentic human connection and expression. Ultimately, experts like Ben Rich argue that the manosphere's biggest flaw is its diagnosis. It's correct that many men are struggling, it sees that, but it's dead wrong about the cause, blaming feminism and women's progress for problems that have way more complex economic and social roots. And all of this leads to the ultimate and kind of tragic irony of the whole thing, the search for connection, for community, for answers that pulls young men into the manosphere. It so often ends in even deeper isolation. The ideology itself can stop them from forming the very healthy, real-world relationships they went looking for in the first place. Which leaves us with one last really critical question to think about. Is the manosphere just a symptom, a response to the loneliness and disconnection of our modern world? Or have its solutions, this ideology of control, competition, and containment, actually become a primary cause of that very same alienation? It's a question that really gets to the heart of one of the most powerful and complicated forces shaping masculinity today.